Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Goffstown Zoning Board meeting of November 1st, 2022. If you'd please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Goffstown Zoning Board is an elected board of 5 members and up to 5 appointed alternates. Tonight we have 4 members and 1 alternate here. If anyone is interested in serving on the ZBA, please contact the Town Hall Zoning Office for some more information. The board has a posted agenda for each meeting and tends to follow the items in order, but not always. The board will open the public hearing on an application to receive testimony from applicants, abutters, and affected parties, and to ask questions about the request. The public hearing will then be closed, and the board will enter into a deliberative session to discuss the merits of the request. For each application, the board will decide to approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a later meeting. You're welcome to watch the deliberations this evening here with us, or you can contact Town Hall to get the results by contacting the zoning office. For an applicant's request to be approved, there must be an affirmative vote of at least 3 members. An applicant can request a continuance if there's not a full 5-member board to act on an application. And as you see here tonight, we do have a full 5-member board, so that shouldn't be a problem. If you're aggrieved by a decision made by the ZBA tonight, you have the right to appeal to Superior Court. However, before appealing to Superior Court, you must request a rehearing with this board to preserve that right to appeal. Rehearing requests must be filed within 30 days of the decision and state all the reasons why the decision was unlawful or unreasonable. Failure to request a rehearing may forfeit your ability to appeal to Superior Court. And I'm going to ask everybody to please silence your phones for the course of the meeting. And I'm going to ask the board to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Derek, please.
Derek Horn, Town Administrator.
Jack Shepard, Building and Zoning and Code Enforcement.
Jason Cody, member.
Gail Brett, Chair.
Judy Elaine, member.
Alan Yaton, member.
Denise Langley, member.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes to the meeting of October 4th. Do we have a motion or corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I second that motion.
Oh, before we go further on a vote, I do appoint Judy as a voting alternate, since she would normally not be voting if we had a full member board, but she will be voting tonight. Okay, so we have the motion and the second. Are there any corrections on that? I'm not going to ask you to look again. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
And you'll abstain, okay. 4, 0, 1, Denise. Okay, motion carries. The first application is Joseph and Caitlin Rogers, applicant owners, seeking a variance to allow a masonry landscaping business to be located within the residential 1 zone of a lot that is split zoned residential 1 and agricultural. A variance is required per section 3.11 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance for the use within the residential 1 zone. A second variance is required per section 5.13 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance, as the lot has only 3.54 acres and 5 acres is required for a landscaping business that are located within the agricultural zone. The property is located at 431 Elm Street, map 5, lot 26, zoned residential 1 and agricultural. And the applicants are here. You want to come up and have a seat there?
I'd like to motion there's no regional impact.
Thank you.
Second.
Didn't even have to ask. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, please, and tell us about your application.
I'm Caitlin Rogers.
Joe Rogers.
Okay?
We own a landscape construction masonry business and operate it out of the house.
Yeah.
We're hopeful to continue. This actually all started by trying to get a permit to build a garage, is what it all started from. So we're hoping to continue. All it is basically a storage place. We don't process material, we don't sell material out of our residence. We don't bring any customers to the house. It's just we store our equipment and we store, leftover inventory if we do natural stones. So if we have rocks or granite or whatnot, we store it at the house. It's pretty much the premises of our business.
Okay. Is that it for now?
I believe so.
Okay, well, we'll see if we have any questions. Does the board have questions of the applicant?
I do.
Hmm?
I do.
Go ahead.
So I guess I'm gonna direct this to the code. Is this considered a home occupation?
No, this is a little bit more, I would say this does not meet the regulations for a home occupation. I think if you look at your zoning ordinance under home occupation, it specifically breaks out, if I remember correctly, it does make a distinction between, I don't have it here. Home occupation is supposed to be fully within the structure, and where this would have parking of employees and parking of vehicles.
Well, I know employees are a key thing.
Yeah, and then additionally, the ordinance does specifically call out landscaping, contracting, and similar businesses. So I would say it'd be not a home occupation accessory to a single family.
How many employees go to your house and then leave your
Two.
property?
Two, yeah.
On top, besides you?
Well, myself and we have two full-time
Two, okay.
employees, yeah.
What type of materials do you store? I mean, because you mentioned something about rock, and what I'm envisioning is these big piles of different types of loam and rock and different things
No.
that I see in other places.
Yeah, so we build like fieldstone rock walls, fieldstone walls and things like that. So if we have fieldstone left over, we don't store aggregate or loom or anything like that. It's more of
Granite, things like that.
Yeah.
Pieces of granite.
like a hard, like I guess a piece of fieldstone.
So roughly how much?
I don't know. Depends on
How
per
would you
job.
how does it vary, in which way does it vary? I mean, that's, one of my concerns is, the amount of storage that there's gonna be on this lot.
I mean, I guess, how would you, I don't know if you could break it down to acreage or tonnage. I mean, if I gave you tonnage, would that be something that you would, I mean, if I have 50 ton, is that something that you would?
That's a lot.
Well, I think it might be better for visualization on how many truckloads, how many large dump truckloads.
A couple.
A couple, okay, that would help
Okay.
visually, I think.
Yep.
40 tons. Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah,
Thanks.
okay. Alan?
I've been watching him work on his house in
Yeah.
the barn. I go by there a couple times a day. But the hole in the ground is for your garage?
It is.
Okay, that's what's done. He has up behind the house, there's a whole clearing up behind the house.
Yes.
And you're gonna store the materials up there.
Yes, up on the top of the
So
hill.
it's not gonna be visible from the street
No,
It's all
or
wooded.
from the road. It's all wooded up there.
yes. So it's actually, if I understand how our lot is divided, our lot, where the house is itself is the residential, zone residential, where they're storing our material is up into the woods. That's the agricultural aspect of it.
How do you get there?
There was actually a natural roadway already, and we just kinda,
Okay.
made it a little bit better to get up back. And the hole, like you said, it was for the
garage.
garage itself.
That'll be next
So it
month.
looks like a garage.
Does the board have any other questions to ask the applicant?
Well, the location, hours of operation,
It's 7 to 3:30, Monday through Friday,
okay,
typical.
typical business.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So
they leave the yard at
vehicles wouldn't be
7 and-
coming and going,
No.
they'd basically come, park, and then go work?
Yep,
And then come back, get their car and go home?
yep, that's essentially it, yep.
Anybody else? Jason?
And I suspect you're plowing snow in the winter?
We are. Yep.
I see all the equipment.
Yeah.
Just a minute. Just a minute, please. Ma'am, I see your hand raised, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions during the public comment. Okay, go ahead. So I'm sorry.
We're transferring, as you stated before, we're transferring all of our belongings up onto the top of the hill once that situation is, suitable up there, so that essentially you're not gonna see anything from
Okay.
Elm Street whatsoever. In the garage that we're proposing to build, not that I don't know if it holds any
Pertains to
precedence to this, but it's gonna be, essentially look like a barn. So it's not gonna be an industrial building, it's not gonna,
Okay.
I guess I have another question for code. Derek, all right. Well, if it's not categorized as a home occupation, and we would grant their variance, would they need to go to planning?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's an important piece for
Yes,
me, because,
other similarly situated businesses have gone through site plan review for this type of business.
with bit of information. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Yeah, I have a code question too. So, if this says the second variance is required because the lot only has 3.5 acres, where 5 is required for the landscaping business in the agricultural zone, do we have to grant a third variance for allowing this to happen because it's also in a residential zone?
No, I think you're granting the use for the landscaping business in the residential portion. That's where the garage is going. And the majority of the business is gonna be up in the agricultural. Since there's no requirement for residential 1 within the ordinance, we didn't think a variance would be appropriate for that, rather cite the overall 5-acre minimum. If there was a lot size for R1, then maybe that would come into play, but since there was not one identified, we didn't think it was appropriate.
Okay, all right, thanks. All right, now I'm done.
Okay. So they still need the 2 variances, one for the lot size being less than 5 acres.
Yep.
And then because they're in a split zone.
Correct.
Okay. In your application, you addressed those criteria for the variance. I'm only seeing that you did it for 1.
It was only,
And there are two variances, and they should have each had their own page.
they told me that I could do it all
Yeah, I
in
think it
one
was
because
combined.
it's the
They're
same, 'cause it's
combined?
the same
It's the
question.
same project and the same,
Okay,
Yeah, it's been the first part, it's got 2 ordinances.
okay, yeah. Okay, that's good. So is there anything that, I'm not going to ask you to read them, and we're not going to read them into the record because they are already part of the record in paper form. So, but is there anything you want to add to them or elaborate on to make sure we understand?
I'm not quite sure I can add anything without being redundant. I don't-
Okay. Alan?
I also, just as a note, the R1 is the smallest portion of the lot.
Mm-hmm, I saw that.
So that it probably represents 25% of the lot versus 3/4 of the lot is in the agricultural zone. And I'd have to say, I like what he did to the barn.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
More to come.
Keep driving by for details.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Okay, board has no more questions?
None at this time.
Public comment? Okay, I'm going to ask you to sit back in the audience, and I'm going to see if there's anybody back there that would like to come and make some comments to the board. Public comment is open. Do you have something you'd like to say? Yes, ma'am. Got to tell us who you are and where you live, and then ask your questions and state your thoughts.
Is that my place?
And your name is
Tammy Ferraro.
Tammy Ferraro? Okay, and what do you want us to know?
No, it was more directed because I do know that the neighbors above us, they're very elderly. They don't they can't really get out well. They do have a tenant there, and they have horses right out behind where he is, and I didn't know what the setback would be for the horse corral and the horses out there where he is.
The setback is,
From the Jaffe's property.
Derek?
So one of the requirements is that there is a 100-foot setback from all lot lines, and I believe that the applicant showed on their plot plan provided the area. It's not scaled off, but they do have a significant amount of room in the back, so there would need to be 100 feet from the lot line. And then similar to that, you'll see you have an application later on in the agenda that livestock, those livestock enclosures need to be located, I believe, 50 feet from property lines as well. So there would be, with those two setbacks, you would have a setback between the storage and the livestock.
Okay.
I'm sure as neighbors, I mean, because the rest have been here, we, don't have a problem because he's not selling anything out of it. It's just staying right there on the property, not an issue. But, I've just sort of taken it under my wing just as neighbors for a long, long time and concerned for the horses because sometimes the horses get out and stuff, and same with their other neighbors, and their security are getting spooked, and I know they take and walk the horses around the loop. And so I just was curious what the setback was for the other neighbors with what they're doing.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments for this applicant or for this application?
Can I speak back on my behalf of that question?
Let's find out if there's
Okay.
anybody else. Nobody else? Okay, then come on back and you can give us your response.
I at one point was up on the hill running one of my pieces of equipment, and I did run into the young lady she was out turning out the horses, and I stopped in my tracks and I introduced myself to her. The woman who take care of the horses or have the horses rent that, the barn and the field, and I just wanted to make sure that what I was doing up there wasn't bothering the horses. And her name was Jessie. She said, absolutely no, not at all, keep going, doing what you're doing. The horses need to get used to the loud noises and such. And it's also not, as we stated before, my employees come to the house in the morning, 7 o'clock, they punch in and we head out. We're not sitting there working all day,
Right.
fabricating, processing, so it's a minimal amount of work that goes on up there to disturb the horses. And again, like I said, I did touch base with the lady that owned the horses, and out of courtesy, safety of whether I'm running a business or not, I don't want somebody, A, the horse to get hurt, and B, this tiny little girl handling the horse. So just to kind of touch on that, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, public hearing is closed. Does the board have any comments? Discussion?
My only comment is if we were to grant the variance, it would be very restricted to what he's currently doing.
Mhm.
And, just to make sure that that's set and that he does go to the planning board for a site plan. Because now he's a business, not a home occupation.
Right. Alan?
No, I'm all set.
Judy?
No.
Okay, do we have any motions?
Do you want a single motion or a motion that covers both variance requests?
Should have two?
You can do them either as one or two. I'll just remind you that whatever your decision is, that you may want to support with findings of
Findings.
facts that we
Right.
can note separately as well.
Yeah.
So I think because they're both variances and they both have the same criteria, you could do them as one motion and then include the finding of fact, but if you prefer to break them out, that's fine as well.
Okay. Well, if you're going to make the motion, I'll let you choose. Alan? Because we do need to include the finding of fact.
That it would be in the public interest because of the mixed use of the zoning of the site. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the content of the business would be screened from the main street and thoroughfare,
And meet setback.
huh?
And it meets setback.
And it meets setbacks. Substantial justice would be, it would allow an enterprise to thrive in the community. There'll be no diminishing in the property values, as nothing was presented to reflect any decrease in or increase in property values surrounding. And little enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance result in unnecessary hardship, being that it was always a farm and some kind of business operation was undertaken there, that the continuance of that effort in a similar nature is
Warranted.
what?
Warranted.
Warranted.
I'll second that.
Okay. And those findings for both of the variances?
Both of them, yes.
Does everybody agree with those, or should we, is there anything that we should add to them, that you want to add to them? Okay, then finding none, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And any against or abstaining? None, motion carries.
Stone walls look nice too.
Thank you very much.
You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next application, Philip Giroux, applicant owner seeking an appeal from an administrative decision to allow for 2 freestanding signs, each measuring 32 square feet in the agricultural zone. The administrative decision being appealed denied a requested sign permit application on the basis the application requested 2 freestanding signs, whereas section 6.5.1 of the zoning ordinance only allows 1 freestanding sign in the agricultural district. The owner is appealing this decision in accordance with section 15.3.3 of the zoning ordinance, and the property is located at 168 Patty Hill Road, map 7, lot 102. Do we have a motion for regional impact?
I'll motion our regional impact.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Any against or abstaining? Motion carries.
I would like to make note that I did talk to my neighbors on it, and I did submit my impact to it on the town, or on the neighborhood at least, in that aspect. And no neighbors objected to my signs.
Okay.
So if you're looking for an impact, I just said, I did somewhat of an impact.
Well,
You guys
regional-
can do your impact.
Regional impact is different than what
Yeah,
you're,
yeah.
it's beyond, it's actually goes beyond the town borders.
Okay.
And it mostly applies to things like noise and pollution, that type of thing for developments.
Okay.
So you're good there.
Right.
Hold on just a minute. Okay, why don't you tell us about your appeal?
Okay. First, I'd like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak here today and voice my opinions. In the past, I've been denied that. And not here, but in another town. And I'd like to make note to the unknown author of the present-day ordinances. It is a task trying to write a law that will meet everyone's approval. To critique something is always easier than writing something. No offense is intended during this debate. Questions are being asked that should be given more thought. This is simply how ordinances and laws develop over time. I just wanted to make sure nobody's getting offended by that. And I've stated my stuff in my appeal, and I'm gonna branch onto it in a sense of, I'm trying to narrow down the issues. And I do not belong, because someone had to ask me this question, I do not belong to any party or group. I stand here as an American, fighting for a right that is important enough to preserve for future generations.
People need to retain their right to question their government and let other legislators in the town know what their representatives are up to. Signs can give a minority in the town legislator an opportunity to let their side or ideas be heard. That is why I'm standing here.
Well, that's why
Yep,
that's
I'm
what
just.
we're here for.
Okay, I'm
Okay,
just,
the only thing that I do want to express to you is that we want to hear more about the details of your specific appeal.
and that's what I'm getting into right now.
What you requested 2 signs.
Yep.
So tell us about the signs, their size, that type of thing. Whereas one is what's allowed, and it's got to be a certain size, but you want 2. So tell us about the signs that you want versus what's allowed, and why we should grant, why the appeal should be overturned to grant the 2 signs.
Okay, that I thought I stated in my appeal. So basically what's happening is.
We just want you to say it.
Okay. I'm just trying to cut that. So what happened is I'm trying to put 2 signs up. One is to state Eversource is not a good neighbor, and another one is to explain why. Because freedom of speech, you can't just say someone's a liar or something like that without giving the reasons why you're doing it. Okay? So now I have the 2 signs, and I'm in a position where, how do you fight this big corporation? I'm a little person, going to battle with courts, you can't. So my solution to this to them was, I don't like the noise you're humming and buzzing or the substation's doing. So I'm gonna make it very simple. I'm gonna put signs up on my property that says you're not a good neighbor because of the humming and buzzing. And as long as those signs stay there and you're not fixing the problem, people can know in the town that you are not addressing the neighbor's concerns. And if you wanted to, you fix the problem, I take my signs out. Very simple.
I want to know more about the signs than your concerns about Eversource. I want to know about,
Okay.
because we're here to address the signs between
Yeah.
the number of signs and the size of the signs.
Okay, so now the stipulation is from what happened is you guys are limiting me to 1 sign. And I'm saying these particular signs are to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This is a whole different category. You guys have quoted Reed versus Gilbert. Now, in the municipal association, it says that you guys can regulate size and sign, numbers and all this. But if you really read that, and I have it right here, and I've read it a couple times now, along with City versus Ledoux, which is more appropriate in this case because it was kind of more concerning petitioning the government. Now, in that particular ruling, they never said that you guys, well, it says that you can or you may. It does not say without any constraint, because it has to be narrowly tailored to basically uphold your reason for the signs. So now what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, you guys said Robert versus, I'll just go with this. However, they appear to be looking over a very important word, may. Okay, it does not give you exclusive rights to limit other things. You still have to come up. Now, when it comes to content neutral, now the courts are using that for a discriminatory case.
Hold on a minute, we're not addressing content. The content is not our issue here tonight.
Yes, but this is part of it.
The content is not our issue tonight. We're not addressing content. We're addressing the number of signs that you put up, where the zoning ordinance specifically says in section 6.5.1, 1 building or freestanding sign of no more than 12 square feet in area for each conforming principal non-residential use, provided that there shall be no more than 1 freestanding sign per lot.
And I'm saying that's unconstitutional. And if you read, according to your read, they even say that since they broke it down to categories, because if you read this, even your categories. If I had construction on my property, I could put a 32-foot square sign on. What's the difference? Now you're putting content in there. Or if I had a candidate's picture or wanted to support a candidate, I'm limited to 1 candidate I can support according to your ordinances. That's unconstitutional. And this is my point here, as a resident. There is a difference between commercial property and resident property. There is a difference between the different forms of freedom of speech. You have freedom of speech to advertise for a business, but you also have freedom of speech to petition the government. There are two different standings, and the reason the two different standings is because in the First Amendment, it directly states to petition the government for redress of grievances. The reason they put that in there is because as a resident on private property in a residential zone, I'm acting as a legislator. I am a town legislator. And now, as a town legislator, I am putting signs up to notify other town legislators. So now for the planning board, in this particular case, to try to limit my signs without any other governmental reasons other than you don't want to see the number of signs or whatever, that's unconstitutional, because that's now infringing upon the different branches of government. These are also considering that these are temporary signs. These are not permanent signs like in your commercial properties, because in your commercial properties, they are anchored on cement footers and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
They're more permanent.
I'm going to ask you to stop for a minute.
Okay.
Take a deep breath, because I don't want us to get into anything heated. I don't want you getting heated.
No, I'm just,
Yeah. Okay, this is the residential, the ordinance for a residential zone,
yes.
okay? And this is what we're addressing. It
Yeah,
is-
and this is what I'm addressing. It's
Right.
unconstitutional.
Well, we're not arguing that. We're arguing the signs, the number of signs and the number of signs and the size.
And you're
That-
holding me by the ordinance that I'm saying is not lawful.
If
You
we grant,
understand?
if we grant,
You have to address the lawfulness of
If
your
we-
ordinance
if
before
we-
you can impact it
if,
or enforce
if
it.
we grant your appeal, then you can take it further. If we don't grant your appeal, then you can still take it further, but in a different direction. But that's where we're at. We're
We're
not,
kind
we're not,
of at in a situation where basically I've notified you now in a public meeting that your sign ordinances are unconstitutional.
We have had them-
Okay?
we have had
Now,
them-
even if you turn around and you approve of my signs.
okay, I'm gonna stop right now.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I'm not gonna keep arguing with you.
Okay.
I'm not.
I'm just trying to keep it on place
We
because
are
basically you gotta
addressing-
figure out if your ordinances are legal first.
We have had them reviewed by legal counsel when they were made, and you have a right, if you want to take it further, to take it to court. However,
And that's where we're gonna lead if you don't want to address this.
right now, we are addressing the size of the signs and the number of the
I'm saying you don't have a
signs.
right to even regulate that at this point.
Well, we do. It's in our zoning ordinances, and that's what we're
It's written in the
regulating.
zoning ordinances,
If
but
we-
I have yet to have an explanation of why they're legal, why you can forfeit and just ignore that. Why is it so important that the legislators, the residents, are more restricted than the people in the village who, this is the reason why you're enacting the sign ordinances? It doesn't make sense. In this village, I can put up a bigger sign and I can put up an unlimited amount of free signs because you don't have any limits on it. But yet, in this particular case, because I'm a resident as a legislator, I have more restrictions? That is not what the court rulings have said.
Denise?
The zoning ordinance is put together and then brought to the town for voting when it changes.
Yes.
We are obligated to follow the variance that we're given, that the people of this town have voted for, whether we like them or not.
Yes, and that's part of
Ordinances
my...
can be changed, they can be put on ballot by petition, I believe, I'm not sure how many people. But we're obligated to follow our variance, and a criteria has to be met for us to grant variances or special exceptions.
Okay, and I understand that, and I also understand that the courts will have to consider legislative intent too, but on the other hand, you have to now look at the court rulings because they're also saying they're very concerned about one party being ruled over another party, controlled over another party. That's where this disparity in signs come in, where one party's being favored over another. Now, and since you're turning around and considering residents more restrictive than these people over here, and these are legislators and these are not necessarily legislators, this is a whole different aspect, okay? So, I mean, this is something that the courts probably have to consider, Because now you also have to consider when it is the legislative meeting at the town meeting, most of the legislators don't show up. So now it's a question of the people that are showing up, are they restricting this point? Because now the courts have also stated how signs are a cheap and very effective way of communicating to their neighbors. Now you're taking that away, now you have to say, okay, I don't have little money, I'm trying to challenge this, I have no aspect to it, I can't even notify the other legislators properly without standing on the side of the road, which the courts will think was ridiculous, because you can put a sign, you should be able to put whatever signs you want. Now the other thing is, your sign ordinances as it is, as a legislator, I'm being limited to one sign. Let's say I want to support a couple articles plus a candidate on the ballot. I can't do that because I'm limited to the one sign. How is this not equal?
Okay.
The other thing that also has to be considered is, and I guess we'll have to start looking into this as a database, because I've also read where in the agricultural zones, there's more conservative people there.
Okay, you're getting
So
far off
now,
track.
you have to turn around and
Time to
question
stop.
the
Time to
different
stop,
parties
please.
here.
Time to stop, please.
I'm just saying, it's a complicated issue.
You're
Go ahead.
getting very far off track, and yes,
I'm
maybe,
just-
maybe it's a complicated issue, but it's not our issue here. Our issue here is the signs, the number, and the size. That is our issue. Other issues beyond that, you'll have to take them elsewhere, depending on the results of our decision tonight. Now,
Okay,
hold on, no,
okay.
I'm not gonna, I don't wanna argue.
Okay.
I have two
Jason?
questions.
Go ahead.
You're a resident at this address, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And have you applied for a variance
Variance for what?
because you're trying to do something that our zoning ordinance
I'm
doesn't
just
allow?
trying to put my signs up to get this noise the way, I mean, you guys are all concerned about properties being devalued because of excessive signs. In the meantime, these people are devaluing
Can
my
you answer-
property with this
can-
constant humming and buzzing.
Can you answer his question? Now, a variance is something that allows, I read you the zoning ordinance where it says one
Yeah.
sign, okay? The variance allows an exception from that rule if you can meet the variance criteria.
But I'm saying your ordinance is a content, not content neutral.
Okay?
I don't even need a permit to put a sign up to advertise for a candidate. But yet I'll need a permit to put a sign up that advertises for an article in the bill that's being advertised.
You need.
That's not right.
You need
That's-
approval for a sign of a certain size, and you only have, according to the zoning ordinance, you're allowed one.
Yeah,
because
and
of your
I'm saying it's
location.
illegal. Why do
Well-
I have to go for a variance for an illegal requirement? You have to abide by the laws and the Constitution first, then I would abide. Now, if I had it turned around and my signs were blocking traffic or something like that, you guys have every right to regulate it. But in this case, I'm not blocking traffic, I'm not blocking no views, no neighbors object to it. What's the governmental interest? And that's what I keep asking.
Judy?
I just want to ask, have you originally gone for a variance to request 2 signs?
That's what
That's
Jason
what I
just
asked.
asked.
Yes, I know.
No one mentioned no
No.
variances, and I would still object to it
Okay.
because I'm stating that the state is
Okay.
unconstitutional in the
So,
first
so,
place.
so my recommendation, not knowing much and just learning all about this too, would be, since it says you have the ability to get 1 sign, right here, in the regulations, you want 2.
Legally.
So the first thing you have to do is go to the town and ask for a variance for 2 signs, and you will be put on the list for the meeting.
I don't know on how that works because under 42 USC 1983, you do have to exhaust all state remedies. But now is a variance actually a state remedy when you're saying in the first place that the statute or the ordinance itself is illegal and you're looking for an excuse or a reason why this should stand as being legal? I have yet to been given a reason by the town why it's legal. Don't you have to provide why it's legal first?
I think we.
It's not the matter of this board
That's right.
to say what is legal and what is not.
No, but, I mean, I'm
Excuse
just
me.
trying to...
I am talking. you need to refrain from interrupting, please.
Okay, thank you.
The ordinance is written and approved, proposed and approved by the voters of this community, period. We sit here to pass judgment on people that want to do something that may vary from that ordinance. Two options, special conditions and variances. And from what I can understand, you haven't applied for either one.
That's because I was not told to apply for a variance. I told Derek I was challenging it under the constitutional.
Well, that's fine.
And he said, you have to apply for your
This-
permit.
this
for
is
your
not a-
appeal.
this
I'm
is-
applying for the appeal, making you aware it's illegal. and
This is not a venue for questioning constitutionality of regulations.
I'm just trying to bring it to your awareness to avoid legal action.
And I think you have.
You
Okay.
So
have.
we should be moving on.
And
We
now,
should move the
we
discussion.
can move on. If you have any other objections, you can object to it. Then I'll do my motion for reconsideration, and then we'll file in the federal courts, because that's where we're leading.
You wanna
Because I
open it
know,
to the
I've read
public?
these courts,
Okay.
I've read these
We're going,
cases, and
okay,
it's
we're
illegal.
going to open the hearing to the public, if the public has any comments
Okay.
that they'd like to make. Derek?
As the administrative officer that made the decision to deny the sign permits, may I have a moment and just kind of,
Absolutely, please.
I think everything was explained in the letter that I provided to Mr. Giroux. Our zoning ordinance may need some improvement in terms of content neutrality, but I don't think it is 100% unconstitutional. It breaks it down by zoning districts. In the Reed decision, the court even said that they could make effective sign laws. Governments can make effective sign laws that regulate sign size, aesthetics, lighting, the number of signs, and that's what our zoning ordinance does. It makes distinctions between districts.
Right.
In your agricultural, your residential districts, those are gonna be the ones that have a little bit higher speed limit than you do down here in the village. You've got a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit down here in the village, so more signs are allowed down here in the village. Bernardville, you're down to 30 miles an hour. Again, you're gonna have more signs allowed in those districts. Additionally, lighting is considered in our zoning ordinance. I don't think that if somebody came in and said, I want to put an LED sign on my front lawn, that we should be allowing that either.
Right.
I think, so I did not consider the content of it. It was primarily the number of signs requested. So, and I think I spelled that out in my letter to the applicant.
As a matter of information, Madam Chair, I'm slightly hard of hearing, as you well know. So today I took my son up there with me and I said, you listen to. So we parked there, we walked around the site and parked in front of this gentleman's house,
Okay, you must be in the pickup truck.
the red one.
Yeah.
And so we listened to, and I have to agree with him. It's excessive noise, and that's why he's here. And we granted Public Service Company, or Eversource, a plan, a very special exception, to put that station there. But as far as I'm concerned, it is excessive noise, and I want Eversource back here to explain to us the mistake we made in granting them that special exception.
I mean, in their defense, they, okay, go ahead. I thought you were done.
Right now, it's just the board talking,
Okay.
having conversation among ourselves, please.
So I'd be as concerned as this gentleman is with the noise and the background noise from that transformer,
So,
as anybody. But the remedy for that is not here. I'm sorry. And it's not here.
I agree.
So, given that, I, for one, don't like to leave it open-ended where we can't advise somebody who has a concern what his possible remedies might be. And it's not with the town, with that noise situation. With the signs, it is.
Right.
And so I'm prepared to make a motion to deny his request for 2 signs and the size.
Well, the request wasn't for 2 signs. The request is an appeal of an administrative decision.
Yep.
So you're going to deny the appeal?
Yes.
Is that what you're, well, first I need to close the public hearing.
May I have a chance to speak to you also, or?
If you can limit it specifically to the size of your signs and the number of your signs.
I'll limit it to what they were saying. I agree with him that it's not necessarily, the sound issue is not necessarily something for the town to address at this point, but in the future, for future projects, that's what I'm trying to make the legislation know and be aware of with my signs, okay? So they can be aware of it when it does come forward. Now, in response to Derek's, yeah, the towns do have rights to stop lighting on signs. They do have rights to limit the sizes and the numbers, but you know what? They also have to go under a strict scrutiny. That was my first statement here, that you can't just regulate it. You need to be able to withstand a strict scrutiny test. Now, when it comes to content neutral, all they're doing is looking at the statute of the ordinance and figuring, is this an ordinance where the signs are content neutral? They put this as a stricter or less stricter scrutiny test, or less the burden of persuasion. In other words, you don't have to have the burden there. But now when it comes to, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I would say we're not addressing the content of your signs.
Yeah, but I'm saying though that the content neutral is a whole different aspect, because the statutes itself doesn't even have to be content neutral. It's just a way of them determining on how much of a burden of persuasion do they put on this ordinance when they're questioning it. Because whenever it goes before a court, it's the person's right compared to the government's right. They always weigh the rights.
Okay, we've
And
heard.
that's where my issue comes in,
Okay.
because in some aspects, I can see that. But in this particular aspect where you're petitioning the government, yes, I have very deep concerns on that, because this is a legislator trying to talk to other legislators. Now, this isn't branching upon or going into the different powers of the government.
Okay, it's time to stop.
Okay, but I'm
You
just-
keep getting way off track, and
I'm just saying, this is
the
what's
public
gonna be
hearing
argued
is
in
closed,
court.
and the board is going to
Okay.
deliberate. I already did that.
I was just gonna say, I think that we should just be talking about the signs. If we're talking
Yes,
about
just
calling
the
them down
signs.
later, let's do that under discussion later.
Right
There's
now,
no
we're
need
talking,
to. We're just talking about signs, no
the
need to have
request for the
discussion.
appeal from the administrative decision for that was denied for the sign permit application on the basis that he was requesting the 2 signs instead of 1.
And I believe that Alan you want to have him,
No,
Motion
I
again?
want to ask a question of Derek,
Okay.
too. In the zoning ordinance, do we allow a 2-sided sign to be counted as 1?
Yes.
So he could put 1 sign up there with 2 sides, parallel to the road, say the same thing, 1 on one side, 1 on the other, and have 1 sign.
No more than 12 square feet.
right.
No more
But
than
it
12 square
can't,
feet.
no more than 12 feet,
12 square feet.
12 square feet.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Point something out. The abridgment,
No,
read your first comment then.
you were saying, Got
Just a
distracted.
question. That the individual can have 1 sign,
Mhm.
2-sided, so the size of that sign can be 12 square feet. You can have a message on one side and a message on the other side, perfectly legal.
but we're not here to design his,
I know.
to solve his problem.
You know me.
Yeah. So we are just here to.
We do.
We are just here to grant or deny the appeal because of the denial of 2 signs and only being allowed 1.
I'm willing to make a motion if you're not ready.
Please.
And we need to make sure that we have the findings.
I'm gonna motion to deny the appeal for the administrative decision for the allowance of 2 freestanding signs, each measuring 32 square feet in the agricultural zone, with the finding that not all remedies were exhausted, variances were not requested, and if we're looking at it specifically for what it's written as, it does not conform to the zoning ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay, so not all remedies were exhausted, doesn't conform to the zoning ordinance, and did you have a third?
Could have applied for a variance.
That would be the remedies
Okay.
exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just those 2.
Okay. All right, so we have the motion, we have the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstaining? Motion carries. The appeal is denied.
Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. The next application, Adam and Marion Resnick, applicant's owner seeking a special exception per section 5.5, 5.5.2.2, and 5.5.2.3.1 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance to allow for the keeping of livestock to be located within 4 feet from the property line, whereas 50 feet setback is required. The property is located at 156 Page Hill Road, map 8, lot 41A, zoned agricultural.
I move the regional impact.
Second.
Okay.
Bless
I
you.
lost my paper.
Took me a minute to find it too.
I lost it. There it is. Okay, Jason and Denise, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against or opposed? Motion carries. Okay, if you would introduce yourselves and tell us about your application, please.
My name is Miriam Resnick.
I am Adam Resnick now.
Okay?
So we were inquiring about the potential of whether we needed a business permit if I started a small business in our home that might involve our animals, which is a long-term potential plan, and found out that we missed the 50-foot setback for our horses. And as you can see on the plot plan, a 50-foot setback is not really possible on our property because, well, there isn't, like if we had a 50-foot setback, the horses would be pretty squished. We also included some pictures so you could visualize that it's a perfect property to have some livestock. The paddock views show that it's long stretched, so they can really stretch their legs. I included the recommended space and housing guidelines from the UNH extension. That's number 2. It does say that 1 to 2 acres for pasture, but we do supplement with hay. So they have plenty to eat, and they can run. On the road views, you can see that they do not cause any nuisance. You can barely even see it from the road. We have a lot of horse properties in that area. Right across is UpReach, who has also sent a letter in support. And we have another horse facility higher up on Page Hill Road and Prescott Stables. There's 2 more private barns down on Locust Hill. And if you look at number 5, the fence is very sturdy to make sure we do not have any escape artists, because I have caught upreach horses more than once, and I do not want them to have to catch my horses. For as far as the master plan for Goffstown is concerned, we fit right in because it's supposed to be rural residential. There's a lot of conservation space in the area. Since we've had the horses on our property, we've had a significant uptick in birds. The turkeys come by every day. And we have a lot of weeds, especially knotweed. I'm sure you're familiar with the horrible fight against it, and we really don't want to use any chemicals. That's why we intend to add the goats, because the goats are a really good remedy for that.
They are? I have knotweed.
Yes, goats are fabulous. They love eating poison ivy, they love eating knotweed, they love eating pretty much everything you want to get rid of. So we're hoping that you will grant us the exception, the special exemption to keep our babies. On the last page, you also see that we have an agreement with our neighbors Cindy and Matt. We had already a verbal agreement before we even moved them, because they're really the abutters that it impacts the most. But we put it in writing just so we could have something to show us. Alec and Kate from across the street are also here to support us today. And you really can't see a whole lot. So we hope you approve us keeping our babies. Pogo is also a rescue. I hope that warms your heart. I don't know, the pony, he's 24. We really don't want him to have to move again. He's very happy and we love having them there. And as I said, we're hoping when my son is a little older to start a small business, which would probably not impact traffic significantly because I would just have a few kids come occasionally for programs like Read to an Animal or like literacy programs, including animals and things like strengthening self-esteem and such things.
Would you have employees?
No, it would just be me. Yeah. So that's why it wouldn't impact traffic a lot, because it would just be a couple hours for me. And I honestly don't even know if I would be making a whole lot of money. My goal would be to just make enough money to pay for my animals and to contribute to the community a little bit.
And if she needed an employee to count as a business, I could be that employee.
Yeah, well, he already...
He's a guy with a shovel.
Surprisingly not. I'm the one with the inside shovel. She has the outside shovel.
Yeah.
Okay, you submitted your responses to the special exception.
Yes.
And I'm not going to ask you to go through them because they're already part of the record. But is there anything you want to add to them? Because this is what we consider. You might melt our hearts talking about the animals, but the special exception and how it meets those criteria is what we really have to consider.
Yeah.
So is there anything you want to add to it or elaborate on?
So on a point that I've noticed when I've been going to work, before the fence was built, as it is now, the horses at times were more stir crazy and just wanting to look around and try and do something. But now that we've been able to clear out that permanent pasture area and have the fence up, they're much more lighthearted and able to get around and enjoy the space more this way.
Cool.
Another part is that so we moved my mare. You might have noticed that the shelter is 10 by 19, just under the size that you need a permit. The reason is that we had to move my mare very suddenly, and we wouldn't have been able to get a permit in time. So we kept the shed just under, because we basically had a week to build the shed in March, right after a snowstorm. And I was struggling finding accommodations for boarding. The thing is that I have very high standards for the way I want my horses kept. Most barns do not have proper turnout for horses. Horses tend to be kept in stalls most of the time, and when they're in turnout, they're in very, very small paddocks and not with another horse together. And I am very unhappy with that. So being able to move her home was huge for me, and I do not want to have to do that. And there are just not a lot of barns that even provide that.
Okay.
And even though there are a lot of horse facility, there's less and less that actually offer boarding. The COVID virus just has shut down a lot of horse boarding facilities in the area. So that would be another reason why I really would like to be able to keep my horses home, just because there's a shortage of boarding abilities. And
if the horse facilities aren't closed, they're charging nearly double, plus asking for full-time training of the horse, rather than allowing the owner to be able to guide the training of the horse.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add before we start asking you questions? Okay. Does anybody have questions? Ellen?
I have a question for Derek. Why is this in the ordinance? Period.
I would have to look at the history of why it was, I don't know.
Neither do I. I should know.
Why is it in
I
the
was gonna
ordinance?
say, you may have been on the planning board.
It's an yeah, but the thing is,
But
the
that's-
4 feet from the property line versus
50.
50.
50. Yeah.
50 feet.
How-
50 feet is big, I
Probably
agree,
'cause there
but
was
4
cattle on
feet
a
is
road somewhere or
close.
something.
But we
Well,
don't make the laws.
No, wait,
You-
the
you-
board's talking.
I was gonna say, you did forget to mention that they're guard horses too, because when I got out of the car, they were like, hey, who are you? So,
May I answer to that?
yeah, sure.
They're actually not guard horses, they're clicker trained horses. So they were asking if you had treats.
Ah, well,
Yes.
they're beautiful no matter what.
Yes.
They were just
Yes.
really cool to
Yes.
see.
Okay.
So.
On track now.
Also, I think the configuration of the site itself
Yeah. That's
causes the concern in terms of that they don't have the flexibility to look for location to keep the animals in the agricultural zones. And I think that's the striving factor, is that they don't have, the lot configuration is not conducive, it's not rectangular, it's odd shaped. This was, originally had a barn on it that was removed before their home was built. And I think the Murphys owned that lot too.
Mhm.
If I could just follow up, I think the 50-foot setback, the planning board at least recognized that if they were gonna vary that, it's not a variance, it's a special exception.
Yeah.
So that it says that it can be except by special exception, so it's not a variance, which has a very high threshold.
right.
Okay.
Thank you.
And
true.
they do have a letter of support here from,
The Murphys.
And outreach.
No, there was one that was on your table when you got here this
Yeah.
evening from Upreach.
I had it.
Yeah.
I got too many papers.
May I ask some questions?
Yes, please.
How many horses do you have right now?
I have one horse and one pony, and
And what do you think your expansion will be?
we want to add 2 goats. That's
Okay,
it.
no more horses?
Well, so once, one of the horses gets older and we can expect the end of their life, we might add a 3rd horse, just so there's an easier transition for the horse that stays behind. But we will never have more than 3 horses. But ideally, we would just like to keep it at 2.
Okay.
So the plan is to stick with always just 2 horses and 2 goats, and that's it.
Okay, and I'm asking that if we were to grant you the special exception, we wouldn't want to say, 15 horses.
Well, we're
I
still,
mean,
Yes.
that's,
It says 5.
we're still limited to 5 livestock anyways, so.
okay.
Yeah.
The letter from Upreach reads that we're in receipt of the certified letter of your intention to seek a special exception for keeping of livestock within 4 feet from the property line. Upreach is familiar with the property and the owner's care of their animals. We're pleased to have them as good neighbors and are in support of allowing this exception as noted. Just thought you might want to hear that.
Thank you. May I comment on the 4 feet? There's just one spot where it's 4 feet. Everything else is more like 6 feet.
Five there, 4 feet over here.
Yeah, and that's always just the shortest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Does the board have, anybody else have questions of the applicant? Okay. Does anybody in the audience want to speak? Okay, I'm gonna ask you two to sit back, and people from the back rows are gonna come and share their thoughts and ask their questions. And please introduce yourselves.
I'm Catherine Muller.
I'm Alec Muller. We live across the street from Ab and Miriam. They're
Muller, M-U...
M-U-L-L-E-R.
Okay.
We live across the street, and they are very courteous neighbors, and the fence that they have is gorgeous, and the impact on us is that it makes me jealous, and I want to make a better fence for our property. And we can only see about 20 or 30 feet of it, actually, because of the way the land goes and the way the natural vegetation is.
Okay.
So we wanted to speak in support of them.
Yes, I'm also in support of them, and not only do they care about the health and well-being of the animals, but I've also noticed that they've been rotating the horses on the property, you know, even though it's a long, narrow lot. There isn't signs of muck or erosion or overgrazing or anything like that. So there's no smells. Occasionally we hear a little noise, but we also hear the noise from outreach more than we hear from across the street. And we were the noisy ones in the neighborhood until our rooster passed away this past winter. And yeah, so I am also in agreement with my husband. I'm in full support of you guys making the special exception for that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none others, is there any final comment you want to make before the board deliberates? Okay, then the public hearing is closed and the board will deliberate. And
I'll motion
go ahead.
to grant the special exception based on they certainly are fitting into the character of the neighborhood. There's no question about that. Their fence is not an eyesore to any passerbys or the neighbors. They are limiting the amount of animals and giving them a larger amount of space that's actually recommended per UNH.
And the property is also a hardship.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And
Yes.
the property
The lot
shape
configuration.
is ridiculous.
The lot configuration is not conducive. Who said that? That was Alan, I think. Or was it you? The lot configuration is not conducive. Okay, do we have a second?
Yep. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstaining? Motion carries. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
You too.
That is a beautiful fence.
It's one of the better ones I've seen.
First thing I said when I pulled up.
It's like,
Nice
wow,
fence.
that's nice.
Nice
Then it
fence.
was, why is that person looking at me?
Yeah.
Okay, our next application, Jordan Meisner? Is it Meisner? Meisner?
Don't look at me, I'm an engineer.
And Bethany Kasich?
That's my wife, she's not here tonight.
Okay. Owner's applicant seeking a variance to allow for the construction of a one-bedroom caretaker dwelling unit to be constructed on a lot within the agricultural zone where it's not permitted per section 3.12 and 5.10 of the Goffstown zoning ordinance. The property is located at Walnut Hill Road, map 2, lot 2, zoned agricultural.
I have just a quick question. is this property entirely within Goffstown? I couldn't tell from the
Yes.
map. Okay, thanks. Then I motion to regional impact.
I think this is for you, Dan.
I'll take Jack.
No, I've got one.
That's fine.
He just gave
Yeah,
us
that's
these.
fine.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
mark
oh,
it.
yes,
Just,
yes,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah, it's everything.
okay.
that
Okay,
you
Jason
had.
moved, did we have a second on the regional?
I'll
impact?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, would you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. All right. Good evening. Matt Peterson with Keach Nordstrom Associates, here tonight in front of the board for the Walnut Hill variance application. I think some of the discussions you've had tonight, this one here might also included in any modifications to your zoning that you do come up with over the next few years. First off, I kind of gave you guys a little handout. It's the same stuff we submitted, it's just easier this way for me to present it and kind of walk you through. But if we take a look at the tax map first, as questioned by one of the board members earlier, this is on the Bedford line. So this is your southern property line here for the town of Goffstown. It's tax map 2, lot 2. This went to the planning board for a subdivision in 2021 to get frontage. That's why the tax map doesn't show it correctly on when you take a picture, but when you zoom in, it's correct.
Okay.
I don't know how that works, but that's how it comes out when I printed it. So you actually have the GIS is right, but it just prints a little different. So this parcel here is approximately 47.88 acres in size. If you turn to the aerial photo, you'll be able to notice the rough grade of the roads that was coming in. Comes up and around, it comes up to the top here.
This one?
You can just kind of make it out the bottom, town line kind of ends right here, but it's right here, the tree that's cut. These photos now, just so you know, the Google photos about 2019.
Could you turn that just a little
Yeah,
bit?
I'm trying to get some too there.
Yeah. Thank you.
So your road is right in here,
Okay.
comes up, and where we're talking about a caretaker is about right in this location here. So the next sheet, what I outlined,
And then you turn it back so the audience can see that.
the next sheet in your package is the ZBA exhibit. The contractor's been worked with the fire department and DPW over the last year and a half to design a road that met their requirements to get up to the residents. However, I think we all know the world's a little different the last couple of years here. My client would like to ask to be able to have a caretaker's unit as part of his property. He has the ability to do it. It gives him the security on site. However, in your zoning regulations, you specifically talk about a caretaker's unit, which was pretty interesting, because even Patty, when I brought up, was very surprised that that was in the zoning regulations there. But at 5.10, a dwelling for resident caretaker, a dwelling unit may be allowed as an accessory use to a principal non-residential use in order to provide quarters for caretakers, security personnel, custodial, and other similar uses. So obviously you thought the commercial flex, and the industrial were where you had to kind of worry about security. I would offer you with just the stuff that's happened over the last weekend, I think residents also need to consider security. And I think when you look at your zoning regulations in the future, you might just put that CU across every single district so that people could utilize that if they wanted to or felt the need for it. But that's here nor there, another time for your change of your zoning in that. But I think, you know, again, when this was written, times were a little different. Is all, I'll leave it at that. This here, I had also given you in your package just to, you know, we have full architectural plans. You will see I have another application in front of you that's very similar size property, but a different approach that they were looking to do than this here. This is specifically a caretaker's unit. We gave full plans here from the architectural design. It's a one-bedroom unit. It's got an office for them and that type of stuff there. And again, as you come up the roadway, the caretakers be about this location here, and then the residential house The main house will be at the top. It would meet all the setbacks and the zoning. It's actually gonna be more like approximately 100 feet off the property line. It's 25 foot is required in the agricultural, but we'll be more like 100 foot off of that there.
What's the distance between the caretaker's house and the residence? Roughly.
Approximately 700 to 800 feet. He hasn't sited the house yet up there,
Yeah.
so somewhere between 600 and 800 feet would be the difference between the two. Again, we're not trying to put two houses where their mom and dad come live and that kind of stuff in their family. This was specifically for having a gate at the entrance to coming up to their property and having somebody on site. That person is actually in the state right now and they're housing them somewhere else right now. So as this moves forward, they would like to get them out of that housing situation. With that said, I'd like to run through the 5 criteria for the variance.
You don't have to run through them specifically.
I've changed it a little bit, so I'd like to get on the record from
Okay, that's
what was
fine.
originally submitted, just so that the record's clean with that thing.
That's fine.
Okay. First off, it would not be contrary to public interest. One of the biggest things we always talk about is granted variance will not be contrary to public interest. More specifically, the requested variance will not unduly conflict with the basic purpose of the relative zoning provisions, as it will neither alter the essential character of the area nor threaten public health, safety, or welfare. The existing neighborhood will remain largely unaffected by the construction of a caretaker dwelling. Proposed caretaker's dwelling would be accessed via the same driveway as the primary residence. Therefore, you will not have a secondary driveway off of Walnut Hill. So your visibility from Walnut Hill, you wouldn't even notice that they would have 2 homes that are up there. The only public interest the applicant sees with this application would be if the caretaker was going to have its access off Walnut Hill or be located to be a detriment to the public. And with the shared driveway and the location of the unit, the applicant believes that there would be no character change here, and as such, the applicant believes the variance would not be contrary to public interest. So that'd be number 1. Number 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Again, we believe the applicant believes that the spirit of the ordinance is to ensure similar uses throughout the agricultural zone and spaced. The addition of a one-bedroom caretaker dwelling to a 47.8 acre parcel is not inconsistent with the surrounding uses, and as such, the applicant believes this variance would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance. Substantial justice will be done if the applicant were able to construct a one-bedroom caretaker dwelling on the property. The addition will provide essential housing for the caretaker security personnel for the homeowner, as well as needed security. Again, I've talked to about the current times that we're in of the on-site maintenance for the property, which the applicant believes would do substantial justice for us. The values of surrounding properties, that one was submitted in yours there. That hasn't changed. Proposed use of the property is consistent with use in the area. Again, it's a residential use. As a caretaker, for security reasons, there would be no reason that that would diminish the surrounding values. And number 5, no substantial relation between the general purpose of the ordinance and the specific violations. Again, I've spoke to this board that I would have assumed that it would have just been a CU in all districts. So to actually break this out of this one and not allow it here is the specific relationship to this lot and to your zoning requirements there, not allowing it. And then lastly, the proposed use of a reasonable one, I would say due to the scope of the project, the applicant believes a permanent caretaker's unit on 47.8 acres would be a reasonable use. And I will open it up for comments or questions you have for me. Thank you.
Denise?
I have a question. What is the difference between a caretaker building and an accessory dwelling that's detached?
Well, yeah, I mean, most accessory dwellings are attached.
But,
And
and
then
that's
it
a
would be based on
requirement in
the
this
square,
town.
the size of it would be the next step. I believe Goffstown's 1,000 on an ADU? 800 on an ADU. So this caretaker unit, I think, is 1,334. So approximately 533 square feet.
So the difference between an accessory dwelling, which is granted in this zone,
Yep.
is that it's larger and it's not attached.
Correct, and it's
Okay.
not in the general vicinity either.
Okay.
And I guess the purpose.
Well, how do you control the purpose?
I don't know how you control it, but the zoning ordinance does make a distinction because there is
Okay,
section.
so the purpose, whereas in
It
a
says-
commercial, there's not a resident and they can be
It says
watching the
quarters for a
business.
caretaker, security personnel, custodial personnel, or other similar purpose.
And in the commercial,
It just talks about section 5.10
Okay.
dwelling for resident caretaker.
Yeah, but when you look at the,
In
where
the-
it's permitted,
It's in,
it's in the commercial, industrial zoned areas.
That's the close, there's no definition for caretaker dwelling unit, that's the closest that there is in the zoning ordinance.
And I would add 27 years of doing this, is the first time I've asked any board for a caretaker's unit, it's the first time I've had a client
I
come
mean,
in
it's a
with
great
full
idea, it's
architectural plans.
just very similar to an accessory dwelling that's detached and large.
I was wondering the same
I
question.
look at it as two houses on one lot. That's my opinion right now.
To me, where I'm referencing 5.10 and calling out a caretakers, that's where I feel the town has the difference on this. And again, my next application is gonna be completely different,
Yeah.
because I agree with you
Yeah.
that where, how do you regulate it?
Does-
I talked to him a little bit and said, well, it's down the hill, it's security for your property that you're building. If he loses all his money that he has in 10 years and has to sell both pieces, I guess they could try, but they'd be back in this board trying to ask for something, because it was specifically in my appeal for a caretaker unit that follows what the definition in your regulation says. And that's all I can give you.
So,
In,
I'm looking to see.
what's the frontage?
At 80 and 123, so 203.21.
They added to it to make it a legal lot frontage.
The gentleman actually building the house for the applicant that applied for this is the one who owns the land next to it. So, yes, he's the one who gave the
Oh, that was
subdivisions.
Benjamin.
He gave the lot line adjustment to have this happen.
Anybody else have questions?
No, this sounds done.
Jason?
I'm trying to look and see if there's a definition of caretaker.
In the ordinance?
Well, there isn't in our ordinance, I'm looking in the state.
Oh.
Well, you do have a definition in your regulations of Goffstown. That's why I'm saying I tried to tie this as close as I could to give you
No, we
something.
don't have a definition of
There's
the
no
name
definition.
caretaker.
It's not in the definition
It's
section, I think
under
it talks
the
about,
district.
it speaks to it in section
Right.
5.10.
Right. It says
So
a
if you
dwell,
look at section 5.10 of your,
Page 52.
Right, but it doesn't define what a caretaker is. Is this an employee? Is this a, that's what I'm looking for.
Well, it just says,
caretaker, security personnel,
To-
custodial
yeah, to provide
personnel,
for-
I guess, yeah.
or other
Yeah,
similar
but the
purpose.
question is
Yeah.
it an employee or not? Because then, it, like Denise was saying, gosh, this is
To me, it's
just a
employee.
big
It's a
detached
caretaker's
ADU.
employee.
So,
Yeah, the way you're defined to me is it's an employee, caretaker, security personnel, custodial would be an employee.
And it is a one-bedroom.
And it's a one-bedroom.
would, I'll ask you this, is your caretaker an employee?
Yes.
Okay.
It is W-2.
Okay, perfect. That's helpful. Because we can put that as part of, if our approval or denial is to say they're an employee caretaker.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, how we can control that. Okay.
Anybody else have questions? Alan? Judy?
No.
Jason, any more?
No, thank you.
Okay, then we're going to open this to the public. Is there anybody back there who has questions or comments? Nobody's moving, so you may not have to move, Matt. Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Any last comments you want to make?
I think everything's in front of you that I need to show you.
Okay, then the board's going to enter deliberation.
Okay. I love the building, I love the idea, I'm struggling with this. It's 2 residents in 1 lot. You know, and it's a shame, but we can't control what's gonna happen in the future. Is it subdividable?
Mhm.
Well, there's a way of doing it. I'm not gonna say how.
The same thing. the next
You know,
application.
you know. I personally think we're opening up a can of worms.
Well, question, Derek. How many lots in town have 2 residences on it?
There's a few.
There are numerous.
There are.
So that doesn't give us the right to keep adding more.
Doesn't create anything to deny it either.
What size is it, square foot?
Well,
We're not bound by decisions, well, first of all, each
Yeah, I know that.
each lot is considered, or each application is on its own merits, and we're not bound by decisions of other boards or, you know,
I know, I made a statement. I understand that, that's your standard speech.
I mean, sometimes we don't like what we have to do, but I just,
Can I,
Is it?
well,
why is everybody looking at me?
Well,
What's the square footage
of what?
of the house?
Square
Dwelling
footage.
unit?
I
Go
think
ahead.
one of the
Oh,
conditions is,
1334.
the person that's residing here is an employee of his.
thank you. That's all.
And I think that has to be in the issue.
Yeah.
And I agree for this applicant right now, today.
But things
The
change.
same applicant in a year from now can do whatever they want on that. Who's gonna stop them?
No, because it's gonna be treated differently, because they're all considered based upon the presentation and the application. They're all treated individually and separately.
No, I agree with that.
What's the allowed maximum square footage?
There isn't
one.
any.
There
There
isn't
isn't
one, not for a
any.
caretaker.
Not for the caretaker, really
Yeah, this is,
separate
this
from
is,
here
this is,
to-
yeah, this is different from an accessory dwelling unit that's limited to 800 square feet. And this one is at 1,300, but it is only 1 bedroom.
But the thing is, if a caretaker might employ, he's one employee, but that one employee might have a spouse
Mhm.
or children. But this is just 1 bedroom, so it's not, that, you know, kids and family are probably not gonna happen unless it comes back to us.
It's a huge 1-bedroom house. 1,500 square feet for 1 bedroom.
Well, that includes a garage.
I'm
office space.
not getting myself into that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, personally, I'm struggling with the use. And if there was a way, I mean, you know, Jack might not be too happy if all of a sudden he has to go and shut them down because they are renting it to somebody who's not an employee, it changes hands. I can see that being a struggle
And we can't even
and
monitor,
coming
we
right
can't
back
monitor
here and
that.
being appealed.
But how do we regulate ADUs?
You don't
We
have to,
don't.
we don't have to.
We don't.
That's why they're attached to a house with a common door to
Okay.
try to prevent that, but we do not have the authority
Wait.
that they can't rent it.
But we have granted variances for separate ADUs.
Under, if they meet the criteria. Yeah,
Okay?
they met the criteria.
Well, that's your opinion.
No, it's my opinion too, so.
I know.
Hey,
But-
listen, I'm always looking for things to
Yeah.
grant somebody a
Yeah.
variance. I'm struggling with this one.
Have AVs been granted in the industrial district, and because it's the same thing, they turned that into an apartment and rented in Bernardville. So what tagged
Yeah.
an industrial district that they couldn't rent it?
Matt,
I know.
thank you.
Well, the thing is, what's the hardship? There is none.
There's a way around this, and it's not for us to tell them how. Matt knows, and that's what I think. That's just
Well, the hardship might be, I'm just thinking,
You go ahead.
I'm always thinking, the hardship might be, the fact is, that the owner of this house needs peace and quiet for some reason, and can't have activities and whatever going around his house.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of activity than what he wants, than what he wants around the house, i.e. maintaining the facility, cutting trees or whatever, or plowing the driveway or whatever. So he doesn't want to be bothered with those kinds of things. I wish I could tell you I was doing the design work, but I'm not.
Again, this could be done if the lot was subdivided. Or another way, I'm not gonna say the other way, which is they wouldn't even want to come here. Not me to tell them. It's still 2 residences on 1 lot.
I don't think we have a regulation. I feel like we're being asked to make decisions and choices on information we don't have, that I don't have in writing in front of me. About
What are you looking for?
Caretaker information or caretaker houses or whatever.
There's been no presentation as to how the caretaker provides services to this lot or to the homeowner.
Well, I don't know if that's so much of our business as it is
Well, we can,
that they are an employee that works for them and they're calling it a caretaker.
but we can't call it an accessory dwelling unit.
They're not calling it an accessory dwelling unit.
Correct.
They're calling it a
Wait.
caretaker.
And
Which
you
is
did
not
mention,
allowed
you
in
did
the
mention
zone.
about the need for, feeling the need for security. And, you know, so that's,
And I understand they want it far from the house, I understand all that. I think there's a way of doing it and have it on 2 lots.
yes, but we're not here to design how they do it.
We're not, that's why I'm not telling them how to do it. It's not easy, but that's,
Any definitions of caretaker in the state law?
I don't know, I can look quickly.
The only one I found so far was the definition of caretaker for the old man of the mountain. That's the only one I found.
so then I'd say no.
Because he's not there anymore.
And the zoning, the New Hampshire zoning site search tool is apparently down right now. So
Of course.
that's not helpful either.
All right, what's Webster say?
Well, that's what I was looking at. So dictionary.com says it's a person who is in charge of maintenance of a building, estate, etc. And the example it gives is superintendent. A person or group that temporarily performs the duties of an office, a janitor, a person who takes care of another. That's what dictionary.com.
Well,
So it could be somebody, there's a caretaker that provides some kind of care for the individual who lives there.
yeah,
Again, I would argue your zoning ordinance doesn't put it in the definition section, but it does define it under 5.10.
Well, I don't see how it's defined. I would welcome an explanation of how it's defined. I just see a word here of caretaker.
Yeah,
It doesn't have a semicolon in as an example, security personnel.
I think that security personnel, custodial personnel, or similar person, or similar purpose.
is kind of like the definition or the examples that meet the definition.
Well, right, but usually it would say IE. Like, I was reading it as caretaker is an individual thing, so that would be maintenance, that, or
No, I'm not gonna,
agricultural maintenance. I mean,
I'm not gonna punish them for improper punctuation.
It could be a caretaker for somebody who's physically disabled.
exactly, it could be.
No, it could be
Okay.
somebody who's going to be overseeing that acreage to make sure there's no, you know, in this time and age, that's a lot of acreage to possibly have concern about.
Can we read 510 out loud?
A dwelling unit may be allowed as an accessory use to a principal non-residential use.
Just repeat that.
A dwelling unit may be allowed as an accessory use to a principal non-residential use in order to provide quarters for a caretaker, security personnel, custodial personnel, or other similar purpose. And if you look in the table of allowed uses, I'm gonna have a hard time finding it again. I know it's here.
Did you just read 5.10?
Yes,
Page 41.
thank you.
No, I'm not adding 5.10.
Yes. Dwelling unit for caretaker or security personnel, number 2, on page 41. It's allowed in a commercial zone, commercial industrial flex. And what's the CU in the zone with, there's a CU in the zone with a dash? There's nothing there? Was it,
Is that industrial? It's industrial, it's not a dash.
oh, it is,
Another thing.
okay, industrial.
That's it.
Okay, it's the wrong, it's in the wrong, going in the wrong direction. Okay, so it's allowed in those 3 zones, and the others, it's not allowed.
So, my opinion is that we are not looking, I mean, I know for all purposes it's a caretaker unit, but based on our definitions, that's basically for a commercial piece of property.
Right.
So I'm looking at this as an accessory dwelling.
But we can't make it fit the accessory dwelling criteria because they're not calling it that, they're calling it a caretaker because of the employee that they're gonna be having,
Okay.
who is going to be caretaker of whatever he's caretaker of, whether it's the property or something that they build, or who knows.
If we were
Derek?
to,
Oh, sorry.
oh, sorry.
Well, Jason had asked for a definition, so I ran back to what I typically did as the zoning officer is looked at the major rewrites of the zoning ordinance. So this town had a major rewrite in 2001, 2003. So in the 1999 zoning ordinance, it talks about a use, and it says residential uses which are clearly incidental to other permitted uses, such as quarters for guards, caretakers, janitors, or daycare centers for employee use only. So I think that's where you get your caretaker that moved into the table of principal uses, was again, those residential uses which are clearly incidental to other permitted uses. Again, quarters for guards, caretakers, janitors, and that was only allowed within the industrial district at that time. So in the rewrite of 2001, it moved to additional, and they changed the wording a bit.
So our zoning basically does not have a definition for caretaker for a residential. It's a completely different definition. Because a caretaker in a residential isn't necessarily a guard watching, it could be somebody taking care of people, could be a nurse, it could be.
I think that could be interpreted that way, but I think that what's the difference between a security personnel that's
In custodial.
or even but watching over a private residence versus a private business? What's the difference in
No, I guess there's
job
no
function?
difference there, depends on how you define a caretaker.
Yeah.
And it's agricultural, not residential. So I think, and this is kind of why I asked about it being a paid employee. If we define it as that in a motion, then that would indicate that it has to be somebody who's employee, which is governmentally watched. They have to issue W-2 and blah, blah, blah. Now,
Not necessarily, not if they pay them under $600 a year.
well,
I mean,
no,
listen,
no.
I mean.
Not getting a house like this.
No, and that's not the point. And the point is truly not this unit or your house. It's future. And this always comes back to decisions zoning boards make.
In the future, they just have to come to the subdivision. If he wanted to break this house off, like to do it now creates 2 lots and he doesn't control it, and somebody lives in it and then they try and squat
I'm
in
not
it.
supposed to be listening to him, but he gave me a good idea.
Just saying.
If I were to go along with this, and not saying anybody else is going to, can we put it in that if, for whatever reason, this becomes a separate residence or it's used as a separate resident, not being a caretaker, with a paid employee, a subdivision has to, no, not a subdivision won't work, I don't think they have the frontage. They'd have to put a road in and divide the lot.
I would just make the suggestion that that is very specific for a motion, and you don't know how zoning may change in the future.
Okay, that's a good idea.
I
Yeah.
think limiting it to the applicant's request for a caretaker that is a paid employee would be simpler. I will remind you that ADUs are written that either the ADU or the house must remain owner occupied. You may have somebody that purchases that property seeing it as a potential income property
Correct.
and not live there. If we receive that complaint, we follow up on it and we would work with the property owner to correct that they did not meet the special exception that was granted in the notice of decision. This would be a similar case. If somebody, if we got some information, we see two different families waiting for the school bus. One of the neighbors, a busybody neighbor or something. Hey,
It's what it's gonna take.
Normally when we see these is when they go up on MLS. That's
Or
when,
they ask for a permit.
yes, but that's where it goes back to, well, if the zoning board they granted a variance based on what was presented at the time, and it was presented as a caretaker paid employee, and that was, again, a variance granted is granted with the conditions that are attached with it, and it goes with the property.
And there is actually one of our zoning, I'd be hard pressed to find it quickly, but what they present here is what they have to do, is what they're supposed to do. So.
They're supposed to.
Can that be changed so that it follows the owner as opposed to the property?
The recommendation that we have gotten from New Hampshire Municipal Association and every training I have gone to is do not tie it into the owner.
Right.
Tie it to the property.
Yep.
It should always be tied to the property.
Because if he sells the property, that they would have to demolish that.
So,
I mean, that's, Ay, ay, ay.
Well, let's go down and address the variance criteria. As he has explained it in writing and in person. Not contrary to the public interest because the requested variance will not unduly conflict with the basic purposes of the relevant zoning provisions, as it will neither alter the essential character of the area or nor threaten public health, safety, and welfare. Do we agree with that?
Hang on, sorry, I'm behind here.
Yes.
Yes. I say no.
I would say no too.
I think it would be, I don't think it would be contrary to the public interest. I don't see any conflict. I mean, probably because of the size of the lot, more than anything for me. But it's not going to alter the essential character of the area, and it's not going to
Certainly, it's
threaten
not gonna
public
affect
health.
the character, it's contrary to our variance.
Oh, wait a minute.
No,
This is
it's-
public
a variance is to,
Wait, grant the variance.
a variance is to be
Must
able
have been also
to,
not until they- Okay, I agree, sorry, I was reading this wrong.
okay. The spirit of the ordinance is observed to ensure the addition of a one-bedroom caretaker dwelling to the property is not inconsistent with the surrounding uses, and as such, the applicant believes this variance would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance.
That's the one I say no to.
Well,
And the only that's just my opinion.
is a one-bedroom dwelling,
It's two separate, two dwellings on one block.
does everybody agree with that? That it's contrary to the spirit of the ordinance?
Well, yeah. Well, let me look at this again.
If he approves number one, chances are number two is also approved.
Mhm, yeah, because they're usually tied together, kind
Yes.
of.
So I would move on to substantial justice.
Wait, hang on.
It will provide essential housing for the caretaking security staff for the homeowner.
Well, actually, hold on, go back for a second. I would not be able to say that the spirit of the ordinance is observed, because the spirit of the ordinance, or the ordinance itself, is specifically excluding the area that they're trying to put it in. It's allowed for these, but the ordinance.
That's why they're here. They're here for a
Right.
variance because it's
Right.
excluded. But the spirit of the ordinance is to allow for a dwelling unit for somebody to come in and be a caretaker of something else, a business, an industry, or something. The difference here is that they're in an agricultural zone?
That is correct.
So that's the difference. And so, but if you find that it meets that it's not contrary to the public interest, the courts usually tie those together. They say that if it meets one, it should be meeting both.
Well, then they should get rid of both questions.
That's neither here
Because
nor there.
I read them differently.
Yeah, I'm looking at.
That's
them on
okay,
their
that's
own
just
merit.
us. I mean, there's five of us here.
And in order to do this, right,
Oh, man, did
We
I
had
say
to-
substantial justice? No, because it's spirit of the ordinance and contrary to the public that are tied together.
right, but we also had to get, I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure it was this one, that didn't they have to get approval from the fire department to change their rules to allow them to have a driveway that was out of pitch, or was that a different property?
No, if it's,
But that's not
That's-
anything that we're doing with
that would be a
this.
planning board item, anyway, not
No,
ours.
but the way that I look at it is that this could pose a problem to our fire department. They're going out of their way and saying, okay, yeah, we can make this work, but it does affect the public interest, because if there's an issue with the fire departments, now it's tied into there.
I agree with you in a different way, but in this matter I don't, because this is far lower on the road, on the driveway.
This doesn't go to the planning
This
board,
doesn't
right,
go all
Derek?
the way up
This won't need to go to the
the
planning board.
hill where
Mm-hmm.
the resident's
No.
gonna be. This is way below that.
And it's my understanding that once you get over 300 feet of length in the driveway, that's when,
Right.
and the hill that it has to
Right.
climb.
Yeah.
So whether it's just a single-family house or a single-family plus a requested
Right.
caretaker unit,
Yeah.
you're gonna have the same issue that was
Right.
already been dealt with by fire and
Because
DPW.
they'll need driveway permits, so they'll know if, DPW will know if the incline is greater than 10%, which is what's allowed. And if it is, then there's more standards there. If it was going towards, say, a multifamily or something, they might require a hammerhead up at the top to be able to have turnarounds for the fire equipment.
Anything over 300 feet is gonna require a turnaround. Whether it's a single-family house, whether, they will not back out a fire truck over
Right.
300 feet, so it's
Right.
gotta have that.
So their feet will be to the fire when when they go to, when they have to go to DPW for a driveway permit. You know, if there's anything out of place there.
Which both have issued the driveway permit already. DPW and the fire department. And that's in your package.
Yeah, I guess I just see that as a change to standards. And when you change standards.
But
it-
that's what a variance is
Hold on,
for.
hold on. No. That, what, in terms of that, when you're doing adjustments and it's permitted, that's fine. But the fire department has operations and procedures that they use to do their services. If there's an adjustment to this because there's changes that are not, that have to be accommodated, that impacts their performance.
I don't quite know what you mean. Because if
Well,
DPW.
I consider that public interest, because it's an opportunity, well, opportunity is probably not the best word, but if they're doing something different, it is not in their normal operations, so there's bigger chance somebody will get hurt. That's the way that I'm seeing it.
I can't say as I agree. I mean, because
that's
anybody
okay.
could get hurt anywhere, anytime.
Mhm.
But they've got their driveway permit.
Mhm. No,
So,
I see that.
so
That's-
they are taken care of as far as that. That's not our, the
Right,
driveway permit's
but
really not our purview.
That's not why I'm saying.
But you're making
I'm
the
throwing it there.
connection that, you're making the connection that in doing this, it's gonna require more services from a fire department?
No, it's requiring different service, different operational procedures. The way that they work is different than what they would normally do.
The way who works?
Any servicing unit, the fire department, police department, any of these are not going to be doing things the way they would do for properties that meet the rules.
I don't quite agree with that.
Okay. That's fine.
I mean, I can't
I
imagine that.
understand what you're saying, but that you could apply that to every single variance we give.
Yeah, no.
So,
you
I'm just
could.
explaining that. I know you and I go back and forth, but this is why we discuss this and
Right.
debate it.
Right. And I'm not saying I'm not willing to listen and understand
Go
and
ahead.
learn,
I know.
so.
Alan, you're next after Denise.
We're closed. I would love to hear from the owner,
Why?
because I want to know more about this caretaker. I don't even know if we can, that we can put it in writing if we were to approve it, what it's gonna be restricted to.
We closed the public hearing, however, no one spoke from the public and no one has left the meeting since you did that, so I don't think,
If they'd be interested in speaking, because if I were to approve this, which I'm on the fence on, I'm not, you know that, I would put restrictions for the future if it were to change, and I need to have a very clear idea on what that would be. Because I could add restrictions that would restrict them now. Does that make sense?
That's what I've been.
It's as
trying-
clear as mud.
Thank you.
I think it's perfectly clear.
Thank you.
I'm just not sure about the restrictions, but I suppose if you
Well,
ask them.
restrictions as in it's not being used as a caretaker unit in the future. Then it would not, we're only giving a variance if we were to approve it for a caretaker use. If it were to change, they would have to, I'm not telling them what they have to do, they have to make it legal, and that's probably doing more than subdividing the lot. So this building is only used for a caretaker in the future. Isn't that what the discussion is? So it doesn't become two residences on one lot? Or am I the only one that's concerned? I mean, I might be, I'm not.
Well,
Well, that's.
I don't think.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. In a very roundabout way of doing it.
Well,
Go ahead, Alan. You
The
were next.
confusing issue is the first sentence in each one of these statements that are made in here. The applicant believes that the spirit of the ordinance is to ensure similar uses throughout the agricultural zone. Blah, 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 no way. That is, we're not going to approve it because we want to encourage it elsewhere. And that's stated over and over here in this presentation. So if you take that sentence out there,
The first one?
well, yeah, okay, if you take that out of there. The statement in number one, granting the variance is fine. In the statement, the existing neighborhood will remain largely unaffected, that's okay, because it will be gradually. The spirit of the ordinance believes that to ensure similar uses throughout the agricultural zone.
Okay, also-
That's not why we're here,
Well,
to
that's,
encourage
no,
this
that's,
to happen elsewhere.
no, but what I take that as is that the ordinance itself is to, kind of, well, it is, to ensure similar uses. It's kind of like a definition, that's not the reason behind that's not his reasoning, but that's the definition of what he's saying for the spirit of the ordinance, as I take it. His reason that he's saying it meets the spirit of the ordinance is because he's saying the addition of a one-bedroom caretaker dwelling to the property is not inconsistent with the surrounding uses, and as such, the applicant believes this variance would be consistent with the spirit of the ordinance.
So how is it consistent with their area usage? It's not.
Well, it's a home.
But it's not a caretaker's home.
It is gonna be a caretaker's home,
I
that's what
know,
they're
but-
proposing it as.
So where else have we got a caretaker's home of any kind in town?
It's still a home. Without the label on it, it's still a home. It's just that they're going to be using it they're building it on their property because they have an employee who is going to be caretaking of the property.
But I don't know of any caretaker's residence in town.
That's okay.
Can we jump right to the hardship?
Well, you had asked a question, and I think the applicant came up here to.
Oh,
Well,
there
wait
you
a minute,
go,
okay.
sorry.
Wait, Let me
Not paying
formally,
attention, I
let me formally
apologize.
reopen the public hearing. And you've heard the question?
Could you restate the question?
If you don't mind explaining what the caretaker is going to do, because there may be a possibility that we would put a restriction that if that didn't happen, that this dwelling could not be used.
So, we need a caretaker for the property because it's, our vision for what we want it to be is simply beyond our means to execute ourselves, that being my wife and I. I don't really know what we would do if we didn't have a paid employee available on site. I'm not gonna maybe enumerate all of the things we'd have them do, just for my own privacy, but.
But it's basic maintenance on this, whatever the acreage is. It's gonna be
Maintenance,
maintaining all the
security,
property.
things of that nature, correct. To be clear, this is, again, it's a house for an employee. This is not, it would be for an employee.
For an employee on site.
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah,
they would
well,
live in
and
there.
I know that sounds like a really silly question, but it's not. I have a business. I could have somebody who's a paid employee live in a separate house on my land. Okay? Well, I'm just saying, that's why I wanted it clear that it's on your property.
Right.
You know.
And for that property.
Correct.
On that property, for that
For
property.
that property.
For that property.
That would tie it differently.
So.
See, I'm trying here.
And even a deed restriction on the house.
So, just so I understand, so, like, not an employee who's has a landscaping business? Okay. I got
They
you.
are paid to work
There,
on that property.
only there.
Because, in the future, somebody else could buy it, they could own a business, and they have their employees live there and work off-site.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm trying to be very restrictive on this use, so that my mind wraps around it and I'm willing to accept it.
And now the public's open here, just to say, this adds a piece to Goffstown that is a valuable piece now when he does go to sell it with a caretaker's house and that, and not as 2 units. Like, people are looking for these types of properties. Obviously, you could have found with a caretaker's house, you would have done that. You know, this is what we're trying to build now. It is a new age, so I get where you're going. That was interesting. I didn't see the employee catch. We are really trying to tie this to where he controls it. No 2 deeds, not 2 houses, not 2 tax bills, not 2 properties, easements, all the other stuff. This is his employee. So I hear where you're at, and I tried the best I could to give that to you, but I can see
It
where,
took a long
I can
time.
see
Well,
where you're going
it's,
to.
it's not something that I want to deny, but I need to be able to live with my decision.
Yep, I
And
understand
own
it
it
now.
if I were to grant this. Okay.
So let's continue with the, I'm gonna close the public hearing.
Thank you for coming out. So the hardship is, basically, it's a large piece of property and the maintenance on the property is gonna require a paid employee to live on site. And also a clerk, have security.
Right.
So it's dual purpose. I'm
And I
gonna go
don't,
back to the other.
and I don't think property values, it's not
No,
gonna affect
that's-
that.
no.
Okay, so I think the other one that we got, that we did we finish about the substantial justice? On that property, for that property, if it's on that
Yeah,
property,
okay.
for that property?
I think that settles that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know I closed the public hearing, so I don't know, but you mentioned something about a deed restriction, so.
Yeah, well, don't worry, there'll be one.
Just a question, has this been to the planning board?
No, sir.
Shouldn't have to be.
I don't think it requires planning board.
Not unless it was a subdivision or something, and it's not, that's not what's before us, it's just that caretaker unit.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Do we have any more discussion, questions?
Well, we don't have a motion, do we?
No, we don't
Oh, I
yet.
was gonna say. I missed
The
something.
confusion exists if you go through the package that somebody conveniently staples together in this. There's a planning board decision. In mine,
Yeah,
That's the lot line adjustment.
Lot line adjustment.
Yeah, it's an excellent.
but it's all stapled together into one here. So I'm reading, oh my God, we've been there and done that.
it's the, the next
That's not the
application that you're
case.
doing?
No, it's all stapled
Yeah,
together.
there's like 12 different things.
Well, at least it's in mine.
I have to say, this is why I like having my PDF versions, because then I can keep them separate.
I'm sorry, Alan. It did go to planning board for that subdivision that I said in 2021 to get the frontage for this lot.
But
My
there was
bad.
also some conditions about somebody building a house here that it was gonna be sprinkled. So it answers your questions about fire department.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion.
Good.
Good. What's the matter?
It's exhausting.
It is. We should be done by now.
I'm gonna
You need another vacation.
motion to approve.
Okay.
Based on the criteria that we went through. We've already done all that.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna need some help with language on the use of the caretaker facility will be a paid employee that is hired to work on site.
Sole purpose of working on site.
Well, they can have a side job. Yeah, you can't, okay.
Primary.
Primary
Yeah.
employment is to work on site and for security and maintenance or whatever, but it's on site.
Yeah, so they would, I'm gonna squeeze it in there, they would be working on site, on that property, for that property.
Correct. And it doesn't need to be their primary. They can have a full-time job working off their computer at night, I don't care what they do.
Right.
As long as they are hired, they're living there hired to work on that piece of property.
Paid
And it
employee
will be
hired to
deeded. Can we put that, add that in? Be deeded that way?
work,
You made the motion.
I'd like to be able, can that be done?
You can make
We
that
can make that,
request.
yes.
what's it gonna be?
It's gonna be in the deed. The restrictions will be added in the deed.
And that a copy of the deed restriction will be recorded with the town.
Recorded with the registry,
Right.
provided to the town.
Provided to the town.
The home occupied business that we were talking about with some of these other things, that's what I would want to make sure we restrict.
We shouldn't tie the hands of other
He
boards
can do
that might
anything he
make a
wants as
decision.
long as it's legal for zoning on his house. So the person living in this house has to work on the property for him for security and maintenance.
Right,
But if
but,
he has a home occupation, that has nothing to do with.
And if you have a home
As long as
occupation,
this person, that's what his job is.
the
Right.
caretaker,
Caretaker's job has to be, he or she, that's their job.
and if you have a home occupation, you're supposed to file with the town. It's in the zoning ordinance. So the town would be notified if there's anything such as a home occupation that might have a part-time employee or something.
right, but I guess what I want to make sure is that there's not a landscaping business that started on the side from that property.
Why? It's allowed in the agricultural zone, it's over 5 acres.
But not for a caretaker's residence. The caretakers, they shouldn't be allowed to start
Yeah,
their
that,
own
the
business.
caretaker residence would be restricted.
Yeah,
You could put that, it's restricted to,
servicing that
for
property
servicing
only.
that, servicing, the caretaker. I mean, you hate to restrict it to one person, because that's crazy.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know.
I'm just trying to.
I know what you're trying to
You
do.
know,
I
now we
just
have
don't know how to
trucks
put it in
being
words.
stored there and
My
like,
head's spinning at this point.
that's all zoning stuff that comes back.
It's a really small spot where there's, I mean, there's not room for anything in this spot where the caretaker's house is going.
And I don't think they're gonna want that while they're there. And when they're not there, if somebody has a caretaker, they're not gonna want a business run out. They're gonna go buy that. I think we're safe there. I think if anything, someone might buy it and try to make it a rentable house, and then that's gonna be the issue.
Right.
But I like it being in the deed because they won't have to be digging for this information if it were to change hands.
Okay. Is that it for your motion?
Welcome.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Let's see.
It was a long, but you know, I didn't want to deny it. but man,
All in favor?
It's tough.
Aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Welcome to
Any
town.
abstaining?
And there's always openings on this board.
Thank you.
Can we have a 5-minute break?
Yes, the board's gonna recess for 5 minutes.
Thanks.
Thanks for the board's
Thanks.
There you go. Ask and you shall receive. Okay. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good evening, Matt Peterson again with Keach Nordstrom Associates, here representing the proposed variance at 75 Tenny Road, which I think some of the board members would have liked me to have tried to do on the previous application, but that was specifically for the owner and that's what he was looking to do. So this one here is located at the end of Tenny Road. I don't know if it's the first time I had ever driven down it.
Matt, for a second, before he gets into his presentation, do you want to make a,
Regional impact. And I should read the application, what the application is about to anybody who's listening out there. Okay, Jane Bigelow, owner applicant seeking a variance to allow for a 2-lot subdivision that will create one lot with 100-foot frontage and the other having 127.62 feet of frontage, whereas 200 feet of frontage is required per section 4.3 of the Table of Dimensional Regulations of the Goffstown zoning ordinance. The property is located at 75 Tenny Road, map 10, lot 22, zoned agricultural. And I will entertain a motion for regional impact.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstaining? Hearing none, motion carries. Now we can go. Thank you.
Excellent. So again, for people in town that haven't driven up Tenny Road, it's my first time finding this little spot out here. As you drive to the end of Tenny Road, you take a left on her driveway currently. You go about halfway in and there's a landing for multiple trails for the town and stuff like that people access for their dogs. I don't know if they do horses.
I haven't seen.
No horses, okay, so dogs, wildlife, walking, that type of stuff. The previous owner had kind of set this up where he put the road in, he created the landing and let it be utilized by the town. So Jane she wants to continue to do that, she has no desire to change that use that's there. She really liked this location, being isolated. If you drive, there's currently an existing foundation that a guy tried to start building a house way back when. He just did the slab for the garage and the basement, and then basically he's walked away, but it still picks up on the aerial. This is what we're working with Alternative Designs to come up with, not reusing it, but reusing the location that is for Jane to build a single residence home at the end of the roadway that is there. Currently on Tenny Hill Road, there is a town-owned piece just to the south of ours, right here, and I'm really not sure why, how, what, that kind of has come about and stuff like that, but it sits there at the end of, next to our property that's there.
Is that in front of someone's house?
Yes, it is.
It is. It was taken by tax deed in
Oh,
the 80s.
that makes sense then.
And the town still owns it all these years later?
Yes, it
How
went
large
out,
is
it
it?
went out to bid about 15 to 20 years ago for somebody to purchase it, but the select board at that time rejected the bids that were submitted.
About a half an acre, I'd say, right?
I think it's 3/4.
3/4 of an acre. Yeah. So that's the road there. Now, why I came with this application compared to some different things that are out there. If you take a look at Tenny Road, it's kind of an interesting area. Coming up on the right side here, there's a house that sits back that has absolutely zero frontage, and it just has its lot carved out around it. Then you go a little further down the road, you have this house that has a little pork chop. On the left, it's got 31 feet of frontage. The next one has 101.8 on the right. I'm assuming they were probably thinking a road or something in there, but I don't know how that makes a lot of sense. Then the next one up just before our property has 68 feet of frontage. So just within a frisbee throw of where our property is, we have frontages that are less than what I'm requesting on our application. There's also more on the side streets, down to 36 and down to 86.8 in other locations. So to me, this request met the spirit of the ordinance, met the public interest in the sense that it's already been created like that in this area here. We're looking to create an extra lot so that she can sell it to her friend and her friend could build a house on property. Unlike the other one that was going to be a caretaker, this one we would like to sell the property. Again, we have 227.62 feet of frontage. We'd like to leave 100 feet with one lot, 127.62 with the other. Both lots would be over the 10 acres for the, to be able to put it in current use. Jane will probably keep the majority of it, but I've shown an approximate location of a lot line on our plan there, but obviously we'd have to get through this board to go to planning board, and then at that point, we'd actually survey. Again, this is a substantial acreage parcel, 90 acres, lots of boundary to traverse and pick up. So, you know, we kind of wanted to see where this board felt on trying to subdivide this into 2 bigger lots at the end of Tenney Road in the town of Goffstown. Obviously, looking now down on the new townhomes that are being built as part of the golf course for the countryside in Dunbarton. They're actually down below us about,
Did you just say you were gonna look down on those houses?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Oh, no. This is one of the prettiest pieces I've seen. She has 360 views at the top, all the way through Goffstown, out to I mean, you probably Mount Monadnock, right? Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting parcel that she's purchased. So again, we're here tonight to ask for a variance. We are going to keep the existing driveway that is currently used today by town people to go in and utilize the recreation area. So the visibility from the surrounding neighborhoods, they're not going to change anything. Actually, John Neville, contractor, is one of the butters. He's actually working with us on the roadway and the DPW, which is awesome because it's easy to deal with him. If you ever worked with him, he's a good guy to deal with. So again, it's going to look the same. We're looking for one house at the top of the hill. I know it was brought up just in discussions here about, you know, if we got through this, could I go and do a 50-lot subdivision on here? That's not what Jane wants to do whatsoever. This is her dream place to have her house at the top. I also don't think, because of the Tenney Road, and I'm not sure how your DPW would look at it, but obviously extending a town road on a cul-de-sac that's already substantially in length, you know, not something we're looking to do here with this board. Again, straight, simple, cut it into 2 lots, build 2 homes, and call it a day. And I can really, it's getting later, can answer any questions or comments that you might have on this applicant. Everything has been submitted, as you know. The last exhibit that you have just outlined, you know, what our frontage is along that. It's kind of a weird pie that kind of jogs out up towards the other house and then back, but that's all of our frontage there for the lot, and again, I'll open up for questions or comments and try and address them best I can.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you asking this board to make a conforming lot into 2 non-conforming lots?
Yes, I am. Based on frontage. They'll be conforming in every other thing except frontage. Similar to what's been done on Tenney Road currently.
And as noted in town here, there's several subdivisions where geometry of the road has required reduced frontages to 100 feet that have been approved by this board. My home is one of them.
No, I have one.
Yeah.
But mine was legal. It was not against the zoning. It was back, you know, many years ago.
Ancient.
It's ancient, just like me.
Getting late.
It is. I mean, you look at this and, I mean, I can't believe the frontages on these other lots. They're pretty low.
Well, those were created in the 90s. I was involved in one of them, yes.
Were you on the board?
Huh?
Were you on the board then?
No, it was me. For me.
Trouble.
Well, we have done a couple of these whereby the reduced frontage, bigger back spaces before.
Yeah, we have.
In several
We have.
instances.
And I'm happy that he put the dimensions, so I didn't have to look too closely on the others. There's a couple of advantages, because it can't become a large development. If you put a road with a cul-de-sac, now you're opening it to a lot more.
So we have a limit on cul-de-sacs too, in terms of length in our zoning ordinance. So if they were to meet that, that would be perfectly fine. And although our tax map shows the driveway that exists here now is kind of in and out of his line for a potential property line, I'm sure he'll correct that in the final survey, because that may not be accurate.
Could we open it to the public? And I'm curious and see what the abutters, if there's any abutters here?
No, we're not quite there
We're not
yet,
there,
I don't
okay. I'm
think.
just curious what their thoughts are.
We're just asking questions of the applicant.
Okay.
Jason, do you have questions?
No.
That was a crazy
Judy? No? I'm looking for something and I can't find it. It's because it's a new printing. I know there's some place in the old ordinance about nonconformity and not making a nonconformity bigger. Now this is making one that conforms into nonconformity. Is there?
There's no such language, and that's the purpose of a variance. The
Okay.
variance is to,
Okay,
I guess, grant that relief from the zoning.
okay.
Section 14.
Yeah, I was just looking there. I didn't see the reverse of what I remembered seeing. So what I remembered seeing was that we were to not make a nonconformity larger. Or to certainly try not to. But like Derek said,
I
that's
think
what.
it's just our best practices that we follow.
Right. But that's what the variance and special exception is for.
Yep.
Okay, do we want to continue going through the criteria?
Yes.
Substantial justice, property values, unnecessary hardship?
Well, from their perspective, I'd like to hear from the public before we go through that.
Okay.
14.7.3. Need to read that one.
Use of a non-conforming lot?
Yeah.
Except as may otherwise be allowed in accordance with section 14.5, grandfather clause of this section. A non-conforming lot may, as a special exception pursuant to section 15.3.2, special exceptions be developed for any use permitted within the district in which it's located, subject to the following conditions. So there's those few conditions that go. It has frontage on an accepted street.
I would just argue that it is currently a conforming lot.
Yeah.
Right.
So that,
Right.
that special exception does not rule here, and then they're seeking a variance
Right,
for lots with less than required frontage.
right.
Which would then, those two lots would be non-conforming, but with the variance, we would treat it as a conforming
Right,
for the purpose of the zoning ordinance.
okay.
Boy, the town would sell that little piece of land, they'd have the frontage.
Talked about it.
Okay. Questions, comments? Okay. Is there anybody in the public that wants to make comments or have questions to this application? I'm seeing heads shake this way. No, there's nobody.
For or against?
We're not taking votes.
Where our property is on that map,
So she does.
because I can't.
Come
figure
on
it
up.
out on the map I have.
Can you show her where her property is?
They're in Dunbar.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
it's on Martin people.
That's okay, I lived in Dunbarton for a year. I did.
So the golf course townhomes are here. This is Route 13. This is the other road that comes into town from Stonebridge Golf Course. So I'm not sure where you guys are in Dunbarton. How about?
We're lot 9, that's all.
Well, you were noticed as an abutter,
Yes.
so they have to be right, somewhere right above that line.
Yeah.
So here's the golf course,
We're here.
and there's where we are right there.
Okay.
So and this drops down to the golf course there.
And that's the Dunbarton GIS, and you can kind of match up the wetland a little bit.
So right there, that wetland.
Yeah, huh?
It's a big hill.
I'm jealous.
I know, I wish they had one with a button down,
What have you, oh,
but you're right, match up the levels,
This
that would be.
wetland would be that wetland. So there's one, yeah, so you guys are pretty close. You're somewhere up in this area here. And here's you said you're 9, lot 9?
Yes.
So you're right there. And you're probably right up on the road? Close to the road anyway. Oh, and there's the golf course. So yeah, you're just off the, oh, so they got rid of all the, I thought they kept the golf course.
No, they
Well, a lot of golf balls, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I bet you did. Right on the 4 holes there.
Anybody else have questions back there? No? Okay. Then the public hearing is closed. Do you have any more questions of the applicant? Discussion?
He looks at me like, no.
You got to a point when I didn't see on the last one, so it's all good.
Alan?
I'm just saying the challenge of this is the configuration, the frontage on the lot, how the lots were created.
Oh.
I mean, it's,
Our zoning ordinance allowed for flag lots at one time.
oh yeah.
So I would assume that was done during this period.
And that would have been allowed a 2 flag at that time,
Yes.
2 lots. So, I'm not against this. And I'll tell you why. First of all, it's a large piece of property. And it really fits into the character of this neighborhood with the small frontages. I mean, I'd love to see the town sell them that front lot and then make it legal. But that's not for us to make that decision.
No.
Well, I think that if you look at the town report, and you look at the numbers of properties that are owned by the town, it's considerable, and I
Well,
would
it's
highly
something like
recommend that
that's
this
a
is not a
postage stamp.
unique one that needs to be saved, it probably
No.
should be
No.
sold.
It's not it's a postage stamp in the front of someone's yard. That's what it is. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, don't worry, I don't ever want to be a selectman, so I'm not going there. So that's my opinion on it. I'm not, I definitely have a different view. That's why I always, never make a decision till I'm here and I hear everything and see everything.
Alan, comments?
None whatsoever.
Judy?
Okay.
No.
And I don't have any. Do we have a motion?
A motion to approve the variance for a 2-lot subdivision, creating one lot with 100-foot frontage and the other lot having 127.62 feet of frontage, whereas 200 feet is required. I think we already discussed the findings, so pursuant to those findings.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any against or abstaining? None? Then all in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank
And remember, we always have openings.
Denise waving the banner.
Come, please, join
From now on, I'm doing that every meeting.
12 square feet.
Okay, did everybody get, just a couple minutes before we adjourn, did everybody get copies of the schedule for the coming year?
I did, and I don't know where to put it, because it wasn't relevant to what I was doing.
And there were also copies of the proposed amendments that the planning board is going to be considering. They're going to be having a workshop coming up this month. And you'll see the first item on there is the accessory dwelling unit with a proposal to change it to 1,000 square feet.
Oh,
And who, what was the discussion of that?
who recommended that?
I didn't get that.
This is a list that staff worked on. It's still a work in progress. So it's something that staff worked on.
Has it been communicated to us?
It is
I
right
don't
now.
have.
Yes, it's being now, so we can add our comments if we want to.
Is it written
But the
somewhere?
point is.
So
why-
Derek, could you give us some background on that decision?
No.
Please, okay.
Let me see if I can find her notes.
And then there's one on here for split lots that are part, say
So the
residential.
split lots I
commercial.
definitely brought to her attention and said,
And
Who's
they-
her? I'm sorry.
Joanne.
Joan, okay, so
And
Joanne came up, yeah.
the proposal to to amend that ordinance has been nixed for now, because the consensus of the board was that they want to address it as a committee rather than put it out to vote just now.
The split zoning?
Yeah,
Such a nightmare to deal
yeah,
with.
because I guess the concern was, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing, so they just want to have a chance to work on it more.
Okay, I'm looking through this still, sorry.
I still haven't found it. This is all.
I got it, but I had so much stuff.
I don't have anything
No,
reference that amendments to the zoning ordinance. I don't even have the schedule, didn't receive it.
Really?
We just got it here tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
see,
in the stuff
it's
tonight.
right with this stuff.
Well, did you steal my copy?
Ellen, I have one from before.
Well, I didn't get
From the planning
one.
board.
Still-
I
Well,
saw
I-
this.
Listen,
Yes,
I'm
you
here all
are,
the
you are
time. I
still
don't
in a
need that.
public meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Derek's like,
Did
control
you,
yourself.
did you send zoning amendments out to anybody?
So, the copy that I understand that you received this evening is what planning staff provided to the
No, that's
planning
right.
board for discussion.
Yes,
I'm trying to find the electronic copy.
yes. I got this at the planning board Thursday, when I was there.
So.
Oh.
So we
So it
don't
didn't
have
come-
that.
So
right?
We don't
No,
have it.
I
Yeah, we
misspoke,
don't.
you're right. But
We
these
don't.
are,
Thanks, we've been waiting, looking.
So I will get a copy of those to you electronically.
Thank you.
then we can review them.
So you can
And
review
comment-
them. The
comment to
planning
Derek.
board will be discussing them in a workshop, and they will hold their first hearings on those in December. They usually have that on the first meeting
And the
in December.
workshop is not open to the public.
No, a workshop is absolutely open.
Oh,
to
it
the
is, so
public.
we could attend, and when is
It's
that
a-
workshop?
I don't know that information.
Let me check my calendar. My phone. Because I think it's the second meeting in November.
14th, I think? No?
No, I don't know how.
No, because they're not meeting Thanksgiving week.
So then, yeah.
Let me see if I marked my calendar. The 17th.
The 17th,
I'm pretty sure that's when it will be. Nope, 10th,
the 10th.
the 10th,
Of November?
yes.
That's right around the corner.
That's next week.
That's next week.
That again is a workshop to discuss what they may put forward for public hearing.
Right.
Again, their public hearing process starts in December.
So is anybody allowed to speak at the
It is a
workshop?
workshop, it is not a hearing.
No.
The planning board, that it would be up to the chair of the planning board.
Tim Redmond, still chair?
Yes.
I noticed he didn't show up on the variance for the noise sound. It's on his property.
Okay, so that's good information. So we
I
can
will,
look
I'll
at
get an
that.
electronic copy out
Please.
to everyone.
Okay. So are there any others that stick out in your mind? We have the accessory dwelling. the split, what else?
Let's see, some setbacks, table of uses for the commercial CIFZ zone.
Okay,
Let's see, tattoo parlor.
yeah. So things that we're dealing with, is, you know, which split is one of them, accessory dwellings another.
They are proposing or going to be discussing, they've already kind of started the practice, you know, the requirement of having to comment to us for
Yes.
certain applications.
So the
They're going to discontinue
requirement,
that.
yeah, the requirement for the planning board to comment to the zoning board on a variance or special exception that deals with commercial.
Right.
We've advised them that that should probably come out.
I think I saw that, because I watched a little part of that meeting.
Yeah.
And I heard a little bit, and I just chuckled.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be nice.
Yeah. And
They had something they said just
And that's
to notify them of, but that was fine. Okay, I like that.
There is a proposed one about fines that you submitted, it came from your office? Or violations?
Yeah, that's under,
Oh, yes.
676.
Yes, Jack caught that, to put in the statutory language for where we actually get authorities to issue fines for zoning violations. We don't currently have that in our ordinance, so that would be in addition to.
So when somebody has a sign that they don't have a permit for,
RSA.
We issue it, but we don't have it written in the zoning ordinance.
right. Okay.
So I have, I mean, is it too late for us to give talk about one that might be added because of this evening that came to our attention, or is it too late?
One that might,
The one with the padlocks, 50-foot
the paddocks?
paddocks, 50-foot in an agricultural district. That shocks me.
I think that the tough thing is the way the ordinance is written, there's no distinction between paddocks and maybe the stables, or where they're being housed, or where there's no distinction, so where you'd think that you put the fence, the paddock right up to the property line, because we're treating them the same.
What's the difference between, I'm sorry, educate me, a fence and a paddock?
I think of the paddock as that outside fence where the livestock can graze.
Yeah.
It's-
But what's the difference between I want to put a fence up?
What if I want to put barbed wire
I'm
up?
just asking the question because
It's
it
in the
shocked
ordinance.
me.
What, and I can't put
I
barbed wire
don't
up?
know that there is one.
Because I can put a fence
Well,
in
it's
my
a
yard.
it's a state law too.
How close to my property line?
On your property.
Because you can't put barbed wire up?
So that's a very,
Nope, not anymore.
God,
What?
I got one property line that's marked by barbed wire.
okay. I'm just asking the question because that
I
did
bet
shock
it's
me,
rusted.
actually. Okay. I get where you're going and the difference.
Yeah.
So maybe paddock and fence needs to be defined.
And I think that 50-foot setback may have been, I'd have to look at the history, may have been put in at the same time. Chicken, remember there was a big to-do about backyard livestock for chickens and hens? I think that's where that 50 might have been put in, I'm not certain though.
Okay.
The great chicken caper.
Yes.
Gee, I get chicken eggs from down there by, right there while you're going home.
Oh, yeah.
They're in the front yard,
The blue.
right next to the road.
The blue ones, yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn this long meeting.
Yes. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
Everybody
you
have a
very
great
much.
week.
I knew this was gonna be a long night.